everybody, welcome back to part 2 of my pastel rose. And now that it's been about 48 hours since I stopped this, now that I have fresh eyes, I can kind of go back and see if there's anything that looks really wrong. I don't really see anything yet, but I'm sure I will as I kind of progress. It's always good to kind of take your eyes off of it for a little while and then come back with fresh eyes. A lot of times you'll catch something. I would say I almost always catch something when I return, but this rose, it's pretty, it's not very far along in the process. I've only done the center, and that certainly took the longest amount of time. So we are just going to continue here with these petals. And so I started inside, and I'm kind of moving my way toward the outside. And notice that I didn't do the background first. And truthfully, the only reason I didn't do the background first is because my hand would constantly be touching and smudging. And you can kind of get over that problem by putting a piece of wax paper or tracing paper or something just kind of over. They also make special hand bridges you can kind of have so that you can lean your hand on a piece of paper. But I think that all those are really good options, but for me, a lot of times I will just avoid doing the background until the end. Now, when it comes to dogs and stuff like that, I do tend to do the background first just so I can put the hairs in, and it kind of will overlap the background more naturally. But in this case, I don't have to do anything too perfectly, because these flowers, I want them to look realistic and really nice, but I don't have to worry too much about getting it all perfect. So, and like I mentioned before, this is the first time I've actually done a pastel flower, so it's all new to me. And if I end up really liking this process, then maybe I'll go back and fine-tune the craft a little bit, but until now I'm just practicing. And this kind of blends down into like a white, but I've been using an ivory in lieu of a white because I just really like ivory, and I think it looks nice on a rose. So I'm actually blending I'm blending the purple right down into the white, and then it will kind of end with just being an ivory color. And I'm going back. I'm trying to go in the direction that these petals kind of have some striations in order to make it look real. Now, for some reason, I've ended up with some sort of weird mark, so I'm just going to kind of blend everything upwards and get rid of those weird marks. And gonna kind of smudge to preserve the light areas here. And then I will blend the purple down a little bit. And for this video, I've zoomed in a little bit better on the flower, because as I rewatched the part 1 a little bit, I realized how my head's in the way and I'm not really right on the flower. So I apologize for my shoddy camera work. I'm working with very low tech supplies here. But whereas I only have a couple of YouTube videos and like 4 subscribers, I'm not really at a level where I'm, doing too much here. But I appreciate all of you guys that are watching this because, I really love creating. It brings me a lot of joy, and I like to give that joy to others by, selling my work, doing a lot of commission work. But, for those of you who want to learn some of these techniques and practice your pastel art, and, many of you may have never done pastel, and, truthfully, it's pretty new to me as well. But I like it so much that I hope it will bring joy to a lot of you. Now I'm going to go in and kind of really lighten this up with a hard pastel. This hard pastel is a New Pastel. That's the brand. New Pastel is from Prismacolor. And it's kind of causing it to be a nice kind of blend in naturally. It's making a nice kind of mark that looks natural. So I like this. Now the flower does have kind of a line where it goes from white to very dark pastel. So that's nice. So I actually got started in art kind of recently. I didn't go to art school, and I have never really been an artist previously. But, I'm in a season of my life where I'm not working because I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I just kind of really needed something to occupy my mind a little bit. And I'm actually been in the process of healing from some trauma that I had. And nothing was really working. And I hadn't really tried a lot of things, honestly. But I did find that I was most at peace when I would just be drawing, and I would do a lot of pencil work, just graphite and a little colored pencil and things like that. And I just found that as I was creating, my mind was really at ease. And I know a lot of people use art therapy as a way to heal from PTSD and all kinds of things. And I said, well, hey, you know what, maybe that will work for me. And I didn't do anything formal. I didn't go to any classes or any specific PTSD counseling or anything like that, but or groups or workshops. But I will say, just sitting down and learning to do art and pastel, it's just been really healing for me. And I hope someday my art journey will help reach out to others through art therapy, or I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it, but I just like creating for now. And so that's kind of how I got started. So it's April. Well, it's not April yet. It's March of 2021 right now. And almost April. My birthday's in April. And I got my first set of pastels, I think, in July of last year. So it's only been about 9 months or so since I've been really working in pastel. And before then, it was really only a couple of months, and I was doing a lot of charcoal, which is very similar to, there's some similar principles there to pastels. And I was also just, doing my graphite which I do like. I feel like I've kind of abandoned those things for pastel, but I really haven't. You know, I still have my charcoals and things like that. I just really enjoy using color. But I do pastel portraits, and occasionally I'll have a black and white dog that I'll end up kind of doing in pastel, or I'm sorry, charcoal, because I think, you know, charcoal is really nice for that sort of thing when you're doing black and white. All right, so now I'm kind of realizing that as I'm moving around, I'm starting to move the pigment around, which I don't really like. So I am going to, now that I've concentrated on the middle, I'm actually going to do what I just said that I wanted to avoid, but sometimes there's no avoiding it. And so I am going to find a piece of paper. Here's one. Just a piece of, I'm kind of using that. Well, that's all right. No, you know what? I'm going to get a fresh piece. A piece of tracing paper. And that will make this a little easier, I think. So I'm going to just put the tracing paper here and then start moving from left to right. Now I'm going to make sure that as I move the tracing paper, I'm not smudging the work. So I am going to just put it here, and I'm going to concentrate up here on these petals. And I'm a little frustrated that I've come this far just to realize I'm going to have to do that, but my planning should have been better, honestly. All right, so I'm going to start here, and I'm going to just keep going. So and now part of me is thinking, well, should I do the whole background? But no, I'm not going to do the background. I'm going to do the background later because a pastel rose, like a rose has nice hard defined edges. So I can keep those hard defined edges, and then I can kind of go in and do a background later, no problem. So that is what we will do. So I'm just making some nice soft lines here. And this is kind of a dark area, but it's kind of pinkish too. All right, so I'm going to do this pink here. I'm just going to put it in a few areas so that it will pop out a little. All right, and I'm just adding some variations in color. Nothing too fancy going on here. I do want to keep it somewhat dark though, because the color underneath is very light purple, and I'm using a little bit more of my light purple than I want to on the top portion here. So I'm not really doing much rubbing down. I'm literally just touching it with this tool here just to blend it in. And it's okay that it's kind of blotting down into the paper, because that's going to be lighter purple anyways, so it's not a big deal that it's kind of going down a little more than I anticipated. Okay, so next I'm going to just take this lighter purple, or this is the lightest purple I have, and I'm going to just bring it down. And I have a feeling that I'm going to have to do a part 3 of this video, because these are very small marks I'm making, and it's a little tedious, and that's okay. That doesn't make it, you know, harder. It just makes it more time consuming, honestly. So I already feel like if I'm going to sell this original piece of art, I want it to be perfect. And perfection sometimes takes time. So it's okay to, you know, most artists, I think, sit for many, many multiple sittings to do things. Now, for some reason, I've gotten very good at my realistic animals where they only take one sitting. And I think that is because I just want to get them done with. So I tend to drink a big cup of coffee during that, you know, late in that day. Because my only time I can do this is at night while my kids are asleep. So I'm just kind of in a weird season in my life right now where, you know, time's not really on my side. And my familial obligations are quite large, so that's okay. Okay, so that's looking really good. I really like how I can see those nice striations. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just go in, add a little bit more. Perfect. So that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to start the same process up here. And now the picture has a little bit of a strange shadow here, and I think the shadow is coming from a leaf that's not pictured. So I don't want to add that shadow in, honestly, because it will confuse the viewer of this picture, because I'm not going to represent the petal that's casting the shadow. So, you know, I'm going to just not add it in, and that's going to be good. And I'm just kind of, anytime that there's a dark shadow, I'm going in with like a dark blue, because I don't have a darker purple, and the blue is actually looking really nice and complementing the purple well. I'm not adding it everywhere, but just where it is darker and kind of in a shadow. And so here I'm gonna now this tool, I forget why I stopped using it the last time that I sat and did part 1. I think it had something to do with the fact that it's kind of flaccid, if you will. I can't really think of a better way to describe it, but you know, it's a little floppy, and so you know, sometimes when you're in really tight corners. You want something a little bit more stiff. That's what she said. But I think that for these petals, whereas I have a lot of area kind of to work in, these big ones on the outside, the tool is working really nicely. And you can buy these tools. There's a brand of them, and I'm sorry for not knowing them. I don't know, I forget the name. I have looked into them, but they are very expensive. And you can buy generic ones on Amazon, which is what I did. And not that I am, usually I don't, when it comes to art supplies, I try to go with, the best of the best, and, things that are good quality and will last longer and, have high light fastness and things like that. But to be honest with the tools, you can get away with not having the best of the best, and I think they still work well. No one is going to say, oh, you're not using, if my stuff sells in this little shop locally to me, and so, I don't think that any customer or any client in my work is going to say, well, this work is inferior if you're not using such and such a brand of tool. I can understand that idea when it comes to certain maybe art materials or brands. You would want to have the best of the best, but tools are a little bit more, you have a little bit more free range there. I do try to make sure that my paints and my pastels are of good quality. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of keep going. And I'm really not liking how this came out. It's a little confusing because this is actually 2 petals. There's one that goes down here, and then there's one that sits on top. So I don't think I've represented that well enough. So I want to go back and try to do that. That's looking a little bit better, but honestly, I think that's a tough thing to represent here. Doing the best I can, though. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my new pastel stash, and I'm going to get, I want to kind of do a lightish purple, and I need to test out the color here. That's a little dark. I'm not sure that I have Alright, this might be a little too much, but it does give this a nice texture that's a little softer. And And if I do that, and then kind of pair it with this, which also has a nice, I'm not loving how this is coming out. This one petal anyways. The rest of this stuff is coming out fine. What if I just define the edges a little bit with the blue? All right. That looks fine. I'm having a hard time representing it, but that will be okay. I'm gonna just try to blend in this blue a little bit. Well, we'll just see how this starts coming out. All right, another thing I want to do is, this is kind of an ivory, and I want to just bring this up a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm softening this edge, but I'm also just adding some texture. And that looks pretty good. And maybe if I do that here too, I will like the results. All right, I am gonna move on to this petal down here. Now this leaf, I am gonna wait a little bit. Because the leaf I'm going to do with soft pastel, and so I want to save it for the end. Alright, so that's a little late. So this is a very dark petal, so I'm going to really go in with this blue and define it. And I'm also going to make a nice hard edge. I've been doing a lot of flowers lately, which is something I haven't done ever. I like floral art, but I just haven't done a lot of it. And it's kind of strange, I'm feeling this push to do them recently. So I've been doing a lot of watercolor florals too. But they're fun, and the one thing I do like about them is that you get the opportunity to use a lot of bright colors, whereas in a lot of my other work I haven't always had that luxury, because dogs and lions and bears, they don't really tend to have a lot of bright pinks and purples. So it's really nice to be able to use the bright colors. Landscapes are another good way to use some nice bright colors. Sometimes if I feel like I just want some brightness, I'll do some sunsets and sunrises have nice colors. I just did a really nice one recently that had a lot of purples and light pinks and kind of those light pastel colors. I just love those. And so every once in a while I'll do a landscape. I feel like just because I feel that my pinks and my purples and my oranges and yellows get so sad that they never get used, and I'm always picking browns and grays, and my pastel box, I just think that there's some overall sadness happening between those nice bright vibrant colors, so I got to use them so they won't feel so bad. So as I'm moving from blending the lighter colors, and then I'm going up to the darker colors and kind of blending them out. So but I am leaving a bit of a I'm not blending this purple in with this pink perfectly, because that petal actually does have a really nice line of, it's like a line of demarcation, I call it. There is a very significant separation of color. And so I do try to represent some of that to an extent where I feel like it's important. Alright, that is looking good, and I can go in with this. I've got some dark blue on the tip of this tool, and I can just kind of move it down a little bit because it is dark in this little crevice. And by doing that though, I've really darkened up over here, but it's okay because in the picture this is actually a pretty dark area. So I am going to move on to this petal, which is basically the same thing as I've been doing. So it is very much purple here. Although maybe it's not as dark as the purple I'm using, so I'm going to try to adjust a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to go in with the blue, and I'm really just going to define the edges here. just defining this dark edge. I should put in some music here. I felt like the last part 1 was kind of boring because I didn't really add music where there's a lot of downtime and I'm not talking. So I either have to do more talking or I've got to go back and edit those videos a little bit better and add some music. But I'm not really good at all that stuff. And the last time I did this, the part 1, I didn't have that much data on my phone. Like, not data, like it was space. I didn't have space available, so I couldn't do that much editing. I just had to put the raw video out on YouTube. So sorry that my YouTube videos are so bad. I appreciate everybody that does watch my videos and find them informing and helpful to your own art. And if you ever have any questions, let me know, because I would love to answer them. I would love to feel like I'm being helpful to somebody and that someone appreciates this stuff I do. But even if you don't, I know people are out there appreciating it, because the amount of YouTube I've watched in order to learn different techniques, and I don't always like and subscribe, even though I think that the artist does a great job. So my feelings aren't hurt, but you can like and subscribe, because I do try to put out a video or so every week. And this week, obviously, I'm doing more because of this stupid flower. No, I'm just kidding. It's not a stupid flower. It is a very tedious flower, though, I'm not going to lie. This, doing this type of flower is just more tedious, I think, than the animals. But it's okay, because I have to practice my craft, too. I can't just do animals and things like that. I mean, I can, but I do think it's important to branch off and every once in a while try something new. I think it helps you grow as an artist. Even if, you know, you don't continue to do it, it's just nice to know that, you know, I tried florals and I just don't like them, or I tried landscapes but I'm not that good at them. You know, because at the very least it gives you an appreciation for those who can sit down and do some of the stuff that you either don't like to do or you have a hard time doing. I honestly, there's not much that I don't do. The one thing that I always say no, and I've never really attempted, I've never given it a solid attempt, is what is it? Portraits, human portraits. They are very intimidating, and I have done my kids, and they just are so bad. I won't even hang them up. I didn't throw the kids' ones away just because they weren't awful, but it doesn't really look like my kids, if that makes sense. It looks like a kid, but I didn't really capture my kid. So I'm not really that interested in doing portraits. There are so many wonderful, gifted artists that are doing portraits. It doesn't have to be me that has to learn that too, you know. My thing is animals and pets. Especially in pastel. I'm an oil painter. Not very good. That's kind of my newest thing. And for that I like to do still lifes. Nobody does still lifes anymore. I mean, people do still lifes, but they're not as common as they used to be. They're a little old-fashioned, but I do see artists still doing them, and maybe I just don't see people buying them as much or putting them up in their house. I hope people still buy them. I haven't sold one yet. Maybe that should tell me to stop. Either that or they're horrible. It doesn't really matter. I actually just enjoy creating, whether people buy it or not. It's more for my own just peace and happiness and meditation and quiet and relaxation. I'm going to try to define this one a little bit just because it's starting to get a little muddled. Now this tool has a little metal piece. I'm going to kind of use it like a pen. I gotta say, it's not doing a terrible job. It kind of is like a pen. It's just kind of smoothing out the edges and making a crisp line. Huh. I think these tools are actually for people that do clay and those sort of things. I have one that's more of a pen here. Sorry, I noticed on the last video I'm constantly like this, and you can't even see what I'm doing half the time, so I apologize. I am still figuring this whole thing out. I do like this tool though, I gotta say. I think I've had them for a while and I haven't really used them, but for blending in this sort of way, it's really worth its weight in gold. I can't get this sort of soft blending with a tortillon. I can't. The tortillon tends to pull off the pastel. And so, you know, that's not really what you're trying to achieve most of the time. So this little tool is really great. And I got like 12 of them. They're all different sheep tips. Okay, that's looking good. And I'm going to just pull this off and show you how the whole thing is progressing so far. So it's really defined. Like, I really like how these ones are coming out, and then I wasn't super happy with over here, but that's okay. We'll see how the rest of this kind of goes, and I might work on that a little bit more, but we'll see. So now I'm going to just move, I'll move the paper just like this. Okay. And that way I can start moving just kind of downward. Okay. Alright, so this petal is very soft, and it's kind of follows here where it's just kind of various shades of purples and lilacs, and then it kind of fades down into ivory nothingness. So we'll see what we can do. The other thing is, the top here isn't well defined. It's kind of ivory. So I'm going to just use this ivory pencil to kind of blend down, blend everything together. So I definitely would call this kind of an easy, if you're like a beginner at pastels, I would definitely say this is a good one to start out with, because it's really just a series of lines and blending, which I guess is how all pastels could be defined, but these are pretty easy. There's really nothing special, and it would really give you a sense of how to achieve some of these blending type looks. Because, you know, pastels do take a certain amount of practice, of course, but also, you know, they work different than graphite and colored pencils and watercolor pencils and those sort of mediums. And so, you know, there's a lot of good things about pastels, but, you know, you do need to play around with them for a while before you know, really learn what they work best with, and, you know, kind of how are the best ways to use them. I really like using pastels. And I do colored pencil too every once in a while, but the reason why I don't like colored pencils is, you know, as much as pastels anyway, is that they just take so long, because you can't just blend them together really nicely the way you can pastels. I mean, I do use Gamsol and solvents to blend and cover more area in a shorter amount of time, but generally I'm kind of more into instant gratification when it comes to this sort of thing, which is why I, you know, really started pastels in the first place, because you were able to make such a beautiful piece of art in such a short period of time because of those blending attributes. But this one's taken a bit of time. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's just, you know, how long do you want to invest in doing a piece of artwork? Do you not care if it takes, you know, 35 hours and 8 sittings? Or do you prefer to get things done and move on to the next thing? Because that's kind of how I am. I have a friend who works like 50 hours on things, and I just can't imagine. I wish I could do that, but I lose interest in things pretty fast, and so I constantly need to like be moving on to the next thing. Alright, so I'm going to use this really. And the other good thing about these little tools is that they can wash off really easily with soap and water. This one's really dirty, so that's what's making me think why I haven't washed it off, but you can, and I should. this is kind of just a little flap of the flower that's a small portion that's kind of flipped over. So that's that. All right, now I'm gonna go in with some darker. What am I doing here? Okay. This has a very dark pink underneath. Not sure that's the pink I was going for, but I'm committed. So here we go. Now I'm going to be blending this in because it's not a perfect pink. It actually is a perfect pink, I think. I think it's the best color pink in the world. But for this flower, it is not. And so I am going to, oh, I was looking for this. This would have been the perfect pink, but it was over on my left side and I forgot it existed. And I knew I had a perfect pink for this job sitting around. Okay, that's looking better. And now I have to darken it up down here a little bit, but I'll just use this purple. Okay. Now I'm going to blend that in. That was really silly of me. And now I have no idea how this is going to come out with this. I mean, I'm sure it'll come out fine because nobody is going to know what the real flower looks like underneath, or the real flower looks like anyways, but now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get right into this petal here because I don't want to leave any white marks. That's one thing you try not to do, is you try not to let any of the paper underneath show through, because that's gonna, you know, kill the illusion that this is a real flower. I mean, the fact that it's going to sit on in a frame is going to kill the illusion that it's a real flower, but we do want to keep it a little bit realistic looking. So that's why a lot of people will do an underpainting. And what an underpainting is they basically, you know, either choose a solid color or you know, they kind of do a first very solid, chunky looking version of their drawing just to get the colors down, so that when they go back over it with the, you know, the details and the next sets of colors, they'll never have to worry about pink, or I'm sorry, about white kind of showing through. So it's actually a really good idea to do an underpainting. But I'll be honest, I've never really liked doing them. And I'll tell you why. Because I think that there is, when you do an underpainting, it ends up looking really blocky and cartoony and not realistic. And even though you can, you know, when you watch artists do that sort of work, it eventually comes out to be this really beautiful, realistic piece of art. And you forget that it ever went through this ugly duckling stage. But I don't. I don't like an ugly duckling stage. I think that when you put a mark on a piece of paper, it should be in its perfect form. And I know that sounds really stupid. And any other artist worth its salt would tell me how ridiculous that sounds, but it is how I feel. And I know it sounds bad and stupid. There it is. That's the truth. I don't like an ugly phase. I've just never come to terms with one. I'm actually really liking the purple and the ivory together. I think they look really nice. Now this petal that's kind of part of this has a really dark portion. It's like in a shadow, or it might just be a dark portion of the flower, but it's really pretty. I'm gonna keep that going. And I know I'm being a party pooper, but I think I'm gonna be putting the final touches on the second part of this, probably a 3-part series of this rose, because I just can't believe it's taking so long. I never in a million years, when I kind of scheduled my time to do this rose, would I have thought that it would be like a 3-part thing. But here we are. And it's okay. I just think that for this amount of tedious work, if I don't take a break, I'll be honest, I'm just gonna be rushing through it. And you never wanna rush through art, especially when you're like almost done. I've done it, and it ends up being horrible, and then you waste all that time that you initially spent getting everything right. So I think for the good of this flower, it's best that I only work in very short periods of time here. So I'm going to get this part 2 out to you after this petal, and then we'll be able to start fresh maybe tomorrow on part 3. I honestly can't believe that this is a 3-part thing. And you know, if you have the patience to sit down the full 8 hours and do it, then, you know, more power to you. But I just can't. I will start getting lazy, start trying to take shortcuts, and ruin the whole thing. But it does end in this nice ivory color, so you know what I'm going to do though? I'm going to use my hard pastel ivory to kind of get some different texture in there. I love hard pastels and semi-hard pastels. I don't want to say I like using them more than soft pastels, because I'm not really sure, but I definitely like using them more than pastel pencils. Pastel pencils are tedious because you're only making such a small line at a time, but I really like these hard card pastels. So these are Prismacolor new pastels. All right, so I'm sorry to keep you waiting again, but this was part 1 and that took an hour. And this was part 2. This might be a 4-part series. And this took an hour. So we're gonna go to bed and be nice and refreshed for the next time that I work on this flower. But here's what we have so far. So that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again. Thanks.